Hi, Wendy, are you there?
I'm here, NaniLea.
Woo! We did it. We got here together.
Yes.
We had quite a few technical reroutes and we're finally here. So thank you for hanging in and thank you for making the time to come and be here and just share your wisdom and your perspective and your insight and your genius. Who we have with us is Wendy Horung, and she is an amazing friend and soul and astrologer extraordinaire. She is the creator of the business holography system, which is a way of looking at your business through holographic patterning of what's happening astrologically and how that influences your business so that you can actually sync your business up with the cycles of nature and help it thrive that way, which is so cool, so amazing. So welcome. Hi.
Thank you.
Wendy and I met at a few different retreats and really got to know each other at a retreat we met in New Orleans. And we synchronistically just ended up in the car together going to the airport. Wendy gave me a ride and we got talking and I started to learn about what Wendy is up to and what she does. And I just thought, oh my goodness, like I've got to weave this woman in her perspective and her genius into this full glory course and share this with all of you because it is just so juicy and so relevant. And so I'm super excited to have you. Thank you, Wendy, for coming.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, NaniLea.
So just to give an overview, we're looking at, I asked Wendy to come on and share on something that we had talked about in the car, which is, I love the word and I love looking at the time that we live in, the word Zeitgeist, and which means of the times. So seeing what time period, what era this is in the world and for humanity, and to realize that different eras have different themes and different energies. And, you know, looking through the lens of astrology, there's a lot of different influence that calls different energies forward, that calls different innovations, different ways of humanity evolving forward. So I asked Wendy to come on and share from the feminine perspective what's happening right now. And what I've learned from her in our conversation is just so intriguing. It's, you know, basically that we are in a 4,000 year cycle, that we're at a time on the planet that we haven't seen in 4,000 years, that is a presencing of feminine energy that has not existed here since, 4,000 years ago. And that there are 3 simultaneous cycles happening on the planet that are all these different 3 areas that she's going to talk about a little bit, that are 3 different cycles happening simultaneously that are all related to the feminine coming forward. And thirdly, that we're in this time where there's an acceleration and a redefining of our values, where there's just kind of massive change and an upgrade and up level and kind of a quantum leap that's happening during this time that we're all here. So, with the women that are in this course, we're looking at our lives and looking at what we're creating and who we are, and are creating from our feminine blueprint, from our feminine essence and intelligence, and bringing that forward in our full glory. So I'm just really excited to hear your perspective and dive in a little deeper on how we're also being influenced by these bigger cycles of nature. So I'd love to just, if you want to just kind of dive into what I've already shared and expand on it. I know
Yeah.
so much. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that was a phenomenal introduction, NaniLea. What's really fascinating about the work that you're doing and how it connects to the bigger picture and the times we're living in with the cycles is that the overlay, the 4,000 year cycle you mentioned, has to do with us shifting into an emphasis on the feminine. So when we think about a cycle in terms of setting a global context that we're all a part of, that we all play a part in, have a role in, when you mentioned the 4,000 year cycle, it has to do with the constellation Regulus, that is about royalty. And it was in the sign of Leo, which is a masculine sign. And just in the last 10 years, it shifted into Virgo, which is a feminine sign. And in the past, Leo, it's about self-expression and about me and my celebration. And Virgo is about serving others, and it is a feminine sign. So globally, the emphasis, the huge 4,000 year cycle context is to bring the feminine into the collective for all of us.
Mm. Wow. And so that hasn't been the emphasis for 4,000 years?
No, not at all. When we think
Wow.
about, well, in the way I know it sounds, so to just to provide the context is to think about that, for the last 4,000 years, when we look back on history, and, disclaimer here, I'm not a, world anthropologist, but from what I have learned in my education and studies is that we do not see many cultures that are that are run by women, that the emphasis in general has been, that the power and the influence comes from the male energy, and the strategies for survival and existence come from the male energy. And now we are shifting into a period, and we are all living on the cusp of this shift. So you can see that, that's, it's dramatic, right?
Yeah. It's so exciting because it feels that way. I mean, to me, it just feels that way. It feels like, wow, we're in this new time that's coming. The world is screaming for it from what I see. And it's just, yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling that it hasn't been for 4,000 years, that this has been, the presencing of feminine leadership.
Right. The focus on how femininity is integrated into society. And so, on a big picture, there's, on the big, huge collective scale, that's one level. And then when we bring it down to how, systems work, that's another. And then when we look at it from how cultures work, that's another. And then we look at it from individually, how we each integrate the feminine expression in our own way. And that's illustrated in each person's chart. No one's expression is exactly the same. And yet the feminine, there's an emphasis on this energy now.
Gosh, it's incredible. And for men and women, just globally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's so exciting. It's just so cool that we're alive during this time. It's a very, to be alive in the beginning and kind of this acceleration period of this new time period, and to be a woman during this time, it's really incredible.
Right. It's an opportunity to lead in ways that women have never led before. And I think it's great that you mentioned that the feminine is in men and women, and that the way that the way that people are reacting to the change, some of it's good and some of it is challenging, right? And I don't mean to be black and white, but it's hard for people, because if you don't have this awareness of how you express the feminine in your whole being, you might be afraid of it, or the shadow side of that gets expressed. And this is part of 3 other cycles that are impacting the world that happen to be occurring all at once and haven't happened all together for over 700 years. So when you talk about an acceleration, you know, everything really is connected, right? And we're all kind of forced into a process together, and then we all individually and collectively get to make choices about how we want to respond to these different contexts, right?
Mm-hmm. I love how you put that. Yeah, we're all in the soup together.
Yeah, that's a nice way to say it, for sure.
Yeah, and so the 3 simultaneous cycles haven't happened in 700 years, huh?
Yeah, so the 3 of them all together. So one
Okay.
of them, yeah, so the first one, the first longest one of the 3 is Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. So Capricorn rules all systems, the way things are structured in order for societies to function, for governments to function, for the global system to function. And Pluto is about change, and it's about getting rid of things that no longer serve a purpose. And Pluto is also about money and power.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are in a period right now that correlates with a repeat cycle of, you know, for America, as one example, for America, this is a repeat cycle that hasn't happened since since the American Revolution, when the colonists broke away from England. And so when you think about it, right, so America was born, England lost a colony, and that also impacted a bunch of other relationships globally. So even though I'm using those as an examples, it impacted, you know, each country in different ways. And so this is the first time the whole world has experienced that repeat cycle. It began in 2008 and will end in 2026. We're in it, and then it won't happen again for another 248 years. And so we're in a period where it's like, well, how are the systems holding up? Is power being used appropriately? And so when we think about the feminine energy as it relates to this, a lot of governments have been functioning on, you know, who's in power, who has the most money, who has control. And we've seen different systems around the world, you know, crumbling. And in America, there are systems that are being tested right now also. And so when we think about the feminine, it's like, whenever there's a balance, a well-integrated masculine and feminine energy, you generally don't see these types of problems. If you think about a harmonious relationship, they may not look the same, but there's a balance, there's an ebb and flow, an agreement, right? That's fluid. When it's not like that, we have these different kinds of challenges. So that's the first cycle.
Mm.
Do you want me to go
So
on
can I
to
just
the
say, yeah, so
yeah.
just so what I'm hearing in that is that the last time that we were in the cycle, that major shift happened and there was the restructuring
Yeah,
of
yeah,
country, of, you know, and that now we're here. I hear in that too, like emancipation happened, like there was, you know, a breaking free of one way of being and a reorganization to another.
absolutely. It was so when you think about it, the colonists came to America because the British, the monarchy was imposing laws and rules that were not fair. They controlled everything. They were making, you know, they were taxing the colonists. They didn't have representation, and out of that, they broke away and created the Declaration of Independence. And then
Mm-hmm.
a few years later, so it was the birth of a new structure, right? So we're in this repeat cycle when you think about creating something new, with the benefit of being able to look back and have a history of how something worked, as there now being an emphasis on the feminine. And at the time that it was created, there was an emphasis on the masculine. We have a new opportunity to step in, influence, and reshape how those structures are designed. And even though they're not, you know, right here in America right now, they're not completely like gone, but they're definitely being tested. And there's things that apparently, you know, obviously need to be changed, right? And so women's influence on these things is imperative, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm hearing you say like there's an opportunity for women, and opportunity and a calling, and like this is the time for it. This is the, I mean, the zeitgeist, this is the time, like for women that are feeling, because I know a lot of women that I work with, it's like they'll have a sense, you know, and the more that they start to explore and open to their real purpose and what their true guidance is, and they start to open and really give themselves full permission to live through guidance, their guidance is actually bringing these massive innovations and these creative ways of redefining culture. And that's what's there. That's what's really there for them when they get to be that clear channel, and they, you know, do that paradigm shift of going from I'm going to just exist within the current culture to I'm actually here to impact and innovate the culture. And when I allow myself to make that shift over to that new paradigm, what comes through the floodgates is like, wow, I would do it this way and this way and this way, and all these new creative ideas coming forward, and that's necessary. Like it's not just, you know, oh, that's nice to do. Like that's actually what you know, the next evolution, the next quantum leap here is about.
Yes, I love how you said that, and it actually is a perfect segue to add to the next cycle, because some women might be listening and thinking, well, I'm not a systems person, you know, I don't want to run for politics, or I don't necessarily, you know, they might not see their specific role in the system, and yet they feel that they're called to make an impact, and they might be unsure of what specifically that is. And that ties into the next cycle I wanted to talk about, which correlates with Neptune and the sign of Pisces. And Neptune is the planet that is connected to Pisces. It's all about water, imagination, creation, dreams, and it's about the cradle of civilization, right? And everything that nourishes life, water. And it's a complete feminine energy, and it's where dreams spring from, right? It's our and it's also about belonging, compassion, and a sense of that we all matter all the time. And so when you were talking, I was thinking, you know, it's about inspiration and trusting the divine influence in things. And so a lot of people, there's so many different ways that people explore their spirituality and their connection to life. And Neptune in Pisces is about the acceptance of all, right? And when we think about systems, you know, in the Pluto Capricorn cycle, and then we come over to Neptune in Pisces, which we're in a repeat cycle that hasn't happened for 165 years, right? The last time Neptune was in Pisces, it was during the women's suffrage movement. It was the beginning of the women's suffrage movement. It was the beginning of the, abolitionist movement, and it led to the Civil War. And all of those things have to do with boundaries and compassion and the rights of everyone. And so now that when we go back to your concept of the zeitgeist and the context of the times that we're in with the feminine focus, it says, like, the implications are that now we've come this far. So when we look back and think, well, where were we 165 years ago, wherever we're from in the world, what's different? And some things are different and some things aren't different. And those things that aren't different, we now have the power and we're being called to step into reshaping these things, where we build those things in that sustain life and connect all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. I love all the details of the history too. It's so fascinating. It's so interesting. And what I hear in that too, that I teach a lot is, that there's been different kinds of feminine movements, or, feminine rising. And that what I've received in my guidance is that this time around, or in this era, it has to be done from an undefended state. that it's not about fighting for our rights or fighting for power or fighting, that it's really about, it reminded me when you said coming into that deeply compassionate state, and that we're all one state of, you know, being undefended, being able to access a deeper realm of our humanity, and to be able to create from that, not from a place of defending for our power. And you know, I say over and over again, the energy from which we create guides and determines our creations. And I just feel in what you're saying, that essence of it's time to create as women, and to create from that energy of our true feminine power, which is inclusive, which is interconnected, which is, you know, relational and deeply compassionate to all life.
You said it so beautifully, NaniLea. That is the quintessential, that is the meaning, you know, you know, because it's really about, we're all connected. There really are no boundaries. And, you know, you don't like beat someone up to show them how to be compassionate. Right. And when we think about being creative, your best creations don't come out of being frustrated or fighting for it. It happens, right? Just, it's a process that's natural. And I think that compassion and what you just described, and knowing the wonderful, beautiful work that you do, is that helping women really understand, you know, their unique contribution to that compassion and that understanding, that it doesn't mean that we're all exactly the same, but to like marvel at the beauty that each of us holds within us, that's part of something that's so much bigger. And that the solutions, when you're in that mode of openness and trust, allows for discovery that can't happen without those ingredients, right?
Yeah, you won't be as, there won't be the opening and the surrender and the bandwidth expansion to receive the file, is kind of how I put it too. If you're defended, you know, and that shows up a lot of ways, even just in a woman's body posture, or in how she lives her life, you know, which is even breathing in and out, whatever the simplicity, it can fractal into all these different ways of expression. But really that just soft, relaxed, open to life, undefended trust, like really down to the core level trust in life. And being in synergy with it. So exciting. Okay, so cycle number 3, that's in simultaneous cycle. What is that one about?
Yeah, so this is great, because they're all interconnected, right? But this one is the shortest of the 3. It's an 84-year cycle. The planet Uranus is about change and breakthroughs. And it's sometimes when we have breakthroughs, we don't really understand where it's coming from. It might seem at first like a disruption, like, huh, what? Like, you know, and we use that word like downloads, but sometimes sometimes they show up as an experience or an event or a meeting or an opportunity, or sometimes it might even appear as something we didn't think we wanted. But it allows for us to discover something we didn't know, and we had no idea that it was coming. And the sign of Taurus is about security and feeling safe and having what we need to survive. So when you think of those 2 themes in this cycle, in conjunction with the 2 that we just talked about, Taurus is also a feminine sign, you know, what feels good. And it's about animals and nature and the earth and food and growing things and farming and real estate and everything that makes us feel safe in the physical world. So now with the planet Uranus there, it's changing. We're having, you know, all of us, the whole world is dealing with changes in the environment, climate change, different issues with resources, right? And the land and animals. So women play a big role, and they have throughout time, in how resources are managed, right? They've always, you know, traditionally women manage the resources with children and the home in many cultures, right? And
Mhm.
now we are now we're in a phase where women are playing more of a role in creating structures, because more and more women are making more money, which that's also ruled by Taurus. And we are more involved in determining what's important to sustain ourselves. What are the priorities? What do we need? Uranus and Taurus is helping us discover what our deeper values are. So I think that really, that's the key thing. What are our deeper values as they connect into that zeitgeist that you're talking about? You
Wow.
know.
I love it. Yeah, I call women, keepers of the tribe. So,
Uh-huh.
and there's an old Apache Indian saying that goes, when the women have lost faith, the tribe is doomed.
Mm-hmm.
So I just see them as really being the glue,
Right.
being the glue, and also being the the ones that hold the keepers of the faith. It's like really seeing the vision for the tribe, and like the values, like you're saying, Taurus being a feminine sign, like holding the values and being that glue that keeps the family really, really close.
So when you think about all three cycles, and this really relates to what you're focusing in on, NaniLea, is with the first cycle that we talked about creating a structure and a system, right, that we can all exist in, that works, right? And then that we all belong, and that we're all part of the cradle, like we come from the cradle of civilization. And then with Uranus and Taurus and this focus on values, and as you're describing that, like the tribe, that women, when they lose faith in the tribe, because they're the ones that know on the deepest levels what you need to sustain life. Women create life in their own body, right? So the connection is so deep and so powerful and instinctual, whether you have children or not. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we come down to the root of it all, the values, then we tie that back into creating the system, and how we build into the system a compassionate way of existing based on those values. They kind of just create their own little vortex that are interrelated to each other. But each of us, each woman has her own very special, unique role in helping elevate the collective understanding of how we have to operate in the future, with more of an emphasis on the feminine energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I love how you just tied all that together. And
Mm-hmm.
it reminded me of even because I also have had so much training in the nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
and women being keepers of the tribe, whether we've had babies or not, we're wired to be like our olfactory system. More of our primitive systems are more complex, and we have more neural networks in our body for sensing that
Mm-hmm.
information. And all of that is it's survival based, so that we could actually, through our smell, we might not be aware of that we're smelling it, but our brain is picking up the information. Our oldest part of our primitive system, we can be telling, just picking up the information of whether there's a fluctuation in the immune system of
Wow.
someone around us as women more than men, because our system is more developed that way, because it's wired that way, so that we can actually be picking up and tuning into a child who may be fighting something off in their immune system. And even before they develop symptoms, something in our nervous system is picking up a fluctuation in their system. And
Wow.
we may already start responding to it by changing their diet, or whatever it is, like, oh, they had an open window and they were sleeping and they're getting a little cold, or we start responding to things not even knowing where we picked up that information. But we
Mm.
are actually wired in our system to pick up different frequencies of information to keep the tribe healthy, to keep everything harmonious in the environment of our ecosystem, of our culture. are. So it's very literal, it's very literal. And so us really, and we say feminine, sometimes that can be like, oh, feminine is this and this and this. So I'll just try to be this and this and this. And what I find is women end up putting masks on. And really, oh, there's a couple things I want to say, actually, that I forgot. It just came back. But really, a woman just coming into the truth, like truth telling of what's real for her, what she does feel, what's raw, what's true, what's running through her. She is the feminine. So she doesn't have to try to be something feminine. She just has to be real. And that's what it is. And what I've found more and more as I work with women is there are many faces of the goddess. This is not, she's just not two or three things. She's all of it. And when women give themselves permission to live in their full glory and to fully experience all of what they are as a woman and allow themselves to completely radically redefine that and express that into the world, in new ways, that's what the medicine is, and so it's such a different thing than pop culture makes it to be too, of like, well, I'm going to be feminine, so that means I'm going to wear pink and do my hair like this and it's just like, no, that's not going to cut it, so in that third cycle that you talked about, like the breakthroughs, what I relate that to, that I see a lot and say a lot, is there's going to be pattern interrupts. There's going to be like, the pattern has to interrupt, because if we're approaching our feminine power and our feminine creativity and our feminine essence through the pop culture lens, it's not going to work. We're not going to have the changes that the world is really calling for. So there has to be these sometimes pretty wild pattern interrupts to like, wake up, let's shatter.
Right.
And that to me is like Kali. That is the energy of like creator destroyer, where we're going to come in and just kind of shatter the illusions of what you thought it was built by the previous cycles. And it has to be born again in a totally new light.
Yeah. And I think sometimes maybe people think, for some people it might be like super just dramatic, and for other people it might reveal itself in more subtle ways. And
Absolutely.
I love how you and I love how you focused on the way the essence of this last cycle, defining your own values. And with Neptune, that we all have our Neptune and Pisces, we all have our own magic and our own contribution to the whole. Those little subtle things that you were saying that are innate, those instinctual things that are woven or part of the female nervous system that is different, are also those are the unique patterns of each individual that has their own like role to play in this big change, and trusting what they just feel, right? That as this new cycle, we actually, all of us are being opened up to acknowledge what we understand, but we may not always understand why we understand what we understand.
Exactly.
It sounds kind of nebulous, but that is part of it.
Yeah, and there can sometimes, there is a difference between understanding and knowing, and it's just like, I know, or my instinct is this. I don't understand it, but this is my instinct, or I haven't put together the logical pieces of it yet. I haven't mapped it out to understand it, and it's coming through in different channels of perception, which some can be, and this is what I focalize a lot in the work I do, is living from, there's a priestess term, noema, which means living truth. So what is your living truth? And also remembering truth is alive, it's living, it's not just living through a concept. If we're really present, especially from your perspective with astrology, like every cycle is so new and different, that in that cycle, we're going to be new and different, and the world's going to be new and different. And it's so exciting to remember that, and to give ourselves that full permission to be fully alive.
Right. And to evolve into what we are here to learn and contribute and share and enjoy, right?
Yeah.
It's all beautiful. It is.
Yeah. And just being in our full glory and in our full feminine essence, and radiating that into the world sends signals and waves and amplifications of, acoustic signals through light fields and energy fields. It's like that also is enough. It's maybe not about building some, project, and it can be, but really it's, just our feminine essence and just really living in our full glory is sending that signal and is creating that ripple.
It's true. And it's beautiful. And the work that you're doing is so connected to all of this. So I was really excited that you asked me to speak with you, because it's so in alignment, and the women that you're working with are benefiting so much from being open to experiencing all of these nuances on different levels, so that they can, bring their edge for, like you said, that can be just interacting with the people you love around you. And I don't mean just like small thing. That's huge.
That's
right?
huge.
Right.
That's huge.
Yep.
Yeah. And the when I look at systems, to me, like family system, relationship is a system, all these like ecosystems of culture. Our community is a system. So it's like all of these little subsystems within the bigger systems. And when we see them through that more, like through the relationship system of like our relationships are a subsystem, and I think that's really can be helpful too for women, that, remembering that it's going to look very different. And we are also still kind of coming out of those cycles from before. So it's like we're really remembering and opening up to like, wow, we're just on the beginning edge of this new cycle. So it's like, wow, like it's going to be different. It's going to be different.
There's a lot of residue, right? There's a lot of residue. There's a lot of memories, on all different levels, and so it's the more that people can be open to feeling what they know, right? The easier it is.
Yeah. And that our feminine guidance system is going to be called and pulled, like literally kind of, these astral forces or literal forces, there is, there's forces that we interact with, that we are impacted with. And some, I'm sure all about this. I'm just going to say simplify it, but each of our own individual system is going to be impacted in a unique way. And collectively, we're pulled and tugged and called and, by these forces of nature that astrology. So it's like right now we're being called forward, and it's exciting, and I notice with women a lot too, there is that kind of remembering and waking up and giving ourselves full permission. And I see a lot of that is like, well, we're coming out of this old cycle where it wasn't the case that this was our time. So a lot of women, it's like underneath in the underbelly, they can be asking themselves like, is it time? Is it okay? Is it now? And that's what the message I want to get to everyone too, is that it's like, yes, it is. It's time. It's now. You're here now for, a reason. This is a very special time.
Yeah. And so I think it's great, like, to think about it in terms of from the macro, that it is time, and that each of us has our unique time to act in specific ways that relate to our own cycles as they connect into the bigger picture. And so the work that you're doing and the work that I'm doing they're so like complementary to helping people, I guess really become aware and help identify and process. I mean, I guess, I don't know if the process is the right word, but just sort of understand what's happening to them, as well as how they fit into the bigger picture.
Yeah. And we really do have to seek it out, because the pop culture, this isn't going to be on like, the 6 o'clock news. Like you have to.
No, there's not like 4 ways to do this. No. And there's not, there's so many nuances that make each of us unique. And we really all do have a very unique place in the world. And that just ties into the acceptance and compassion for all of us, right? We're all here for a reason. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's exciting to know that
Yeah.
we've all come here to be here during this time.
Right.
So it's just beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm just in awe of all of this. It blows my mind open to just remember how, this, I mean, to even think of a 4,000-year cycle just reminds me what a blip this one lifetime is and how special and sacred it is, and that we are a part of something so much bigger,
Yeah. Yeah. We're setting up the future, right? It's amazing. Yeah. How cool is that?
That is, I mean, we're kind of here to like break it in and build the foundation for the,
Right.
this next era. And wow,
Yeah.
it's just very humbling and inspiring at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, inviting me to this conversation. I really enjoyed it. It's the work that you're doing is so amazing, and it's incredible. So,
Thank
thank you so much.
Thank you. And likewise,
Thank you.
it's just been a very mutual appreciation of one another, and a synchronicity, and a kind of like, wow, like just a mirroring of like, you're doing this, I'm doing that. Wow. It's been so incredible. And I love that you have, it's like the star version of your feminine blueprint, and it's just so beautiful. I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate you taking the time out today to come, and I know that we will be playing together in the future.
I look forward to it.
Too.
I really look forward to it. It'll be great. Well, I will definitely be in touch soon. Thanks so much again.
Thank you.
All righty.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Okay. Bye, Wendy.